Addendum to that last message that I put up. What really made it worse was whenever I tried to get in contact with Wikipedia, like send a message to them, let them know that there was something wrong with their software. They There was no clear, easy way of doing that, and all I got was a big old bunch of paragraphs about things that I could do and stuff. But I mean, if you don't offer a direct connection by which people can get access, and and if you just don't have the staff to deal with it, then that's your problem. But the thing is that if you don't offer a method of contact, um, nobody's going to want to use your service. Of course, you could say that about my service, but my service, I'm not taking any money, and the kind of things that I'm doing isn't, tied to anybody. That's not My service is not designed to be used by multiple. Actually, it is. It's designed to be used by multiple people, but I don't think anybody. I've tried to open up my site, and the experience I've had from that has just not been very good, and so I ended up closing my site to out outside contributors. And if somebody wanted a playlist on my site, I could offer them a playlist, but I'm not going to give them access to the playlist generator. And so, in any case, but I mean, the thing is that you should be able to contact Wikipedia and tell them there's something wrong with their site. It could be that they get so many complaints that they can't talk to everybody, and so they end up putting like facts and stuff like that to cut down on cut down on the amount of messages they get. But I've given them at least $100 in the past, somewhere in that vicinity. I mean, I know over a period of time of years, I've given them at least $200 of my money. But this is it's really sad. I even know ways they could augment their service. I suggested to them a special pass through, a special mode where you, what I called an X-ray mode, where you could actually see where the heavy edits inside of an article were, because they keep all they keep the deltas, what are called deltas. That is the differences between one edit and another edit. So they keep all the deltas of every single article, and you can actually go through and see what an article looked at any particular time. And the heavily contested articles will have lots of edits in a certain area. And if they had an X-ray mode where you could like actually see, um, you could see parts of the article that haven't changed at all, and then see the parts of the article that are ever changing and actively changing. Then you could understand that the stuff that's been there for a long time is more reliable than the stuff that's constantly changing. But that's something that it's something that they could do, but are probably not going to do because they probably can't see the beauty in it, and getting something like that done. Because the big complaints that you get from, say, conservatives, conservatives have the tendency not to believe Wikipedia is a trustworthy news source or a trustworthy information source, whenever even the encyclopedias are not all that well correct. Um, the thing is that Wikipedia is crowdsourced and has a better chance of being correct than an encyclopedia where you only have maybe 5 or 10 researchers on any particular topic. And Wikipedia has the potential to have tens of hundreds of thousands of researchers on every article, or on not every article, but on the more common articles, and the less common articles have less. But at least you got something on it, and it's more all encompassing of all of the stuff that's in the world. Whereas your encyclopedia is not going to have anything about Pokemon on it, unless it's relatively new. If it came out several decades ago, it's not going to have anything about Pokemon on it, but Wikipedia will. And Wikipedia will have things on it about PS5s and PS4s and CPUs and certain figures that are, so that your encyclopedia is not even relevant anymore, and also the Wikipedia, their database is completely available for download, and you can actually get a clone of Wikipedia running on your machine, but it's about 300 gigabytes or so of data. It's just you would probably only do something like that if you were, say, a library and you were taking your library offline, off the internet, probably to protect the children and stuff. And so you would just have access to a clone of Wikipedia running locally. I'd imagine. Anyhow, the thing is that the conservatives need to understand that every single edit that is made to any article in Wikipedia, it's all logged. And so nothing's ever lost. Nothing is ever deleted. Even stuff that's added is not deleted. It's removed, but it isn't deleted. It still exists in the log. So it's still logged in. And so you can go through the article at any particular time in the past and see what it looked like, which is different than an encyclopedia where you don't know what edits they've made to the encyclopedia over each release, of that encyclopedia. And so it's more trustworthy in that you can also, they'll have footnotes, they'll have links, they'll take you to certain sites and stuff. The reason why I wanted to get into Wikipedia is I just wanted to get into the talk page on Wintel, and I wanted to tell them that Wintel doesn't only mean a marriage between Windows and Intel hardware. Wintel is also what they called devices that offloaded their computation, offloaded their parts onto the hardware and the Intel hardware through Windows. And so Windows devices had there were sound devices that Windows had, where some of the DSP computations were not done on the soundboard, but were actually done inside the Intel processor using Windows. And this was way back in Windows 98. And it led to a lot of hardware that could only work with Windows 98. And some examples is there was a microscope that you could use that had a video feed, but it only worked with Windows 98 hardware and software. It wouldn't work with anything newer, and that became a popular piece of junk that you would find at your local Goodwill, and it would just sit there and nobody could use it, and people just assumed that it would have some use, but not unless you're a electronics geek, unless you're some electrical engineer, you're probably not going to be able to make much use with it. And that's I remember going to, I've gone to thrift stores and Goodwill and places like that, and there's always this case where you'll find just a gunk of bunches of hardware that only work with a certain version of Windows and a certain set of PC hardware that no longer exists. And so that stuff is basically what we call doorstops, you know. And so it's sad, but true. There's a lot of stuff from the past technology that came out that's completely useless because it was tightly coupled to specific hardware and software. And I called those hardware Wintel hardware because it's tightly coupled to Windows and Intel hardware from a particular time. And I tried to put that into Wikipedia, and it wouldn't even let me get to the talk page because it had a block on the IP addresses. It was the VPN IP addresses, but I turned off my VPN and it still was doing it. So the only thing I can imagine is that it was retaining the state with using the cookie. A cookie is basically just a piece of information on your end that at the very least has a number in it, and that number correlates to entry in a database on the server side, and it's kind of like a name. It helps them recognize you and remember the state of your browser and what you were doing, and it's possible for them to rely so much on the state that they forget to go and check to see if anything's changed, like IP addresses. And so it'll look at the state and it'll say you're blocked, and so we can't get anything from you. But even if you change the IP address, it doesn't change the state until the software checks to see if the IP address changed. Which it looks like it favors the state of the cookie over the actuality of where your communication's coming from, and I don't know why they would do that. It sounds really stupid. And so what it means is I'd have to go in and clear out the cookie that I have with Wikipedia so that they would treat me as somebody new, and then they would go upon the IP address I'm coming from. It's maddening.